Gesafa. My name is David Peterson, and this is the Art of Language Invention. Episode 24, Adposition and Affix Placement. A while back, YouTube user DliasMGG asked the following question. Can you please make an episode on things that influence whether affixes, adpositions, inflections are at the beginning or the end of a word? Yes, I can, and this is that episode. The great thing about this question is that there is a really simple answer, so if you don't want to watch the rest of it, here it is. The reason that you have postpositions or prepositions or suffixes or prefixes is because these elements come from full words, and it's just the same order that they were in when they started off their existence as whole words. So that's it. So it's like, why is that thing a postposition? Well, because way back when it came after it. It's kind of a cop-out, but it really is kind of nice because then you don't have to make up why this stuff happens. It just kind of does. So anyway, here I will show you some examples though to really tease out exactly how this happens. Here's a kind of nonce example using modern English. So let's say that you said something like, my love for fish is most high, surpassing flowers. You can say something like that. It's kind of dumb, but anyway, if you have this expression surpassing flowers, surpassing is, of course, a participle. And so it comes before the noun that it modifies because that's what participles do. They're adjectives. They come beforehand. Imagine, though, if that became a preposition. If that became an adposition. The question is, well, will it be a postposition or a preposition? It'll be a preposition. Why? Because it comes beforehand. Why does it come beforehand? Because that's where modifiers go. And so that's really the answer to it. And that's really the answer to most of these questions. It will just differ based on language and the specific details that you get. To give you some specific advice on this, adpositions themselves come from, most of the time they come from one of three sources. They either come from verbs, from nouns, or from demonstratives. And the expressions that they come from are typically a verb, like a transitive verb object situation, a genitival situation for two nouns, and then with demonstratives, of course, the demonstrative modifying some sort of noun. So if you ask, well, what's the order going to be? It's going to be the same order as the object and the verb when the adposition comes from a verb. The same order as possessor and possessee when the adposition comes from a possessor, right? Foot of the bed. Yeah, possessor. No, shoot. Sorry, possessee. Gosh darn it, I always get that wrong. Possessee. And then for demonstratives, it's going to be the order of the demonstrative and the noun, with the demonstrative being the adposition. Here are a couple of conlang examples to show you how this works. So in High Valyrian, you'll have a word rinya, which means girl, and you have the word ruklon, which means flower. So if you wanted to say the girl's flower, you'd say rinyo ruklon. So rinya is the nominative. Runyo is the genitive. It has an O instead of an A there, and then ruklon is flower in the nominative because we're just doing a phrase right here. So rinyo ruklon, the girl's flower. The possessor comes first, the possessee comes second. Now imagine if you wanted to say something like the girl's summit or zenith. There is a word for this in High Valyrian. That word is bais. And so if you wanted to say the girl's summit for some reason, you'd say rinyo bais. Rinyo, girl, is the possessor. It's in the genitive. Bais comes second because it's the possessee, and it's in whatever case. In this case, the nominative. What happened in the history of High Valyrian was that this word bais shortened up and became a postposition. So it altered itself phonologically, or the people who spoke it altered it, I guess. Well, realistically, I did, because I'm the conlanger. But anyway, bais became be with a long E. And so now that it's a postposition or an adposition, it is a postposition because it came second, because that's where possessees go. And so you have rinyobe, which means on top of, or in some cases above, the girl. So, and then also, by the way, if you're wondering, well, how do you get this postposition assigning a case? Now we know why. It assigns the genitive case because originally it came from a genitival construction, and that's how you get this postposition assigning some particular case. In Erathian, a language from Defiance, the basic word order is VOS, and a sentence might sound or look something like this. Zadon enuda dilachazanye. And that's the girl grabbed the flower. Zadon is kind of auxiliary. Enuda is grabbed, kind of. Dilaha is kind of flower, and zanye is girl. So that's a regular sentence. You see the verb coming first and the objects and stuff coming afterwards. There is a verb shongu. Shongu means to be similar to approximate, to be the same as, and it eventually became an adposition. And so the question is, where does it appear? Well, it's a preposition because verbs come before the objects that they modify. And so you could say something like shongu dilaha, and that means like a flower. Same story here with inflectional affixes. It just might differ where the affixes are coming from. I'll give you some natural language examples. So in Spanish, have you ever noticed how sometimes in the first person singular present tense, you have these verbs ending in Y? I mean, most of the time it ends in O. So something like, cantar is to sing, canto, I sing. But then you have verbs like soy, estoy, doy, and what's another one? Voy. And they end in Y for seemingly no reason at all. Well, there is a reason for it, and it's because, at least there's a physical reason for why you have the Y there, and it's because it comes from the pronoun yo with a Y. And the reason why is presumably because, I don't know, maybe people thought that the verb was too short, and so like it was getting lost, because without that Y there, these inflections would be, do, vo, and the other one, so. And then, of course, for estoy, we know that the E got added at some point. So probably at some point in the history of Spanish, it was actually just sto, coming from Latin stare, if I've got that right. Anyway, so people, for whatever reason, started saying with these verbs in particular, doyo, voyo, soyo, and stoyo. And eventually these things just kind of squashed together, and you got this Y stuck on the end there. Why is it on the end? Because that's where they put the yo. Why did they put the yo there? That's a very good question. Probably because, you don't need the pronouns in Spanish, but if you feel like the verb is too short, you got to throw it in somewhere, and so you use the postverbal position. That postverbal position gets used a lot in Spanish. Still, often if you look at the wrong text, or the right text, depending on your opinion, you might come away with the impression that Spanish is actually a VSO language. It happens. But anyway, so that's why the Y is a suffix, and that's why it's there. You see a similar thing in Spanish with the future tense. So I'm sorry, with the composite future tense, not the go future. So for the future tense, I sing, you say cantaré. It looks like cantar, the infinitive, plus a suffix. Well, why not a prefix? Why not e cantar for the future tense? That's because this comes from an older Latin expression where you would say something like cantare habeo, which meant something like I have to sing, or it is fated to me to sing, but importantly you have the infinitive followed by a present tense conjugation of the verb habeo, or whatever the infinitive is, habere, whatever. So you put that afterwards, and you just do that in Latin because that's where the auxiliary went when people were using this expression. You would put the infinitive first, then the auxiliary. Then, of course, the expression shortened up, and so the reason why you have this suffix, this suffixal inflection, in the Spanish composite future tense is because the auxiliary followed the verb. And so now it's a suffix. And that's the entire story. In the past, I may have mentioned that if you use the historical method, you get this kind of stuff for free. Well, this is what I meant by it. If you're sitting down as a language creator before a blank page and thinking like, okay, I've got to create absolutely everything. I know a lot of people get stuck on like, oh, how do I create words? But at least if you're using the historical method to do things like this, you don't also have to say, well, what are the suffixes and affixes I'm going to have? What are the prepositions I'm going to have? And how am I going to come up with phonological forms for them? You don't need to do that. You get that stuff for free if you just create the words and then evolve them up. And then suddenly you get all of your suffixes and prefixes and what have you, all of your adpositions, and they're all there. And you can just apply sound changes to shorten them up if you need to. So that's kind of why the historical method is both more complicated, more time-consuming, but also easier and just cheaper. Like, because you just get all this stuff for free and you don't have to do anything. It's lazier almost. And also more authentic, which is just the best. That's it for this episode. If you have a question that you'd like for me to answer on the show, leave it in the comments or send me an email at djpquery@gmail.com. If you want to see more videos like this one, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching.